Hey everybody, Texas Trucker here, Lance's Performance Shop, LoneStarMopars.com. Welcome back to the Ram Revival where we left off. I believe it was part 57, kind of got back in the swing of things. And we announced some really sad delays, mainly in terms of our long tube headers. So the cool thing, we're upgrading the long tube headers. The not cool thing, we're waiting a long time for them. Now, on that front, I will tell you right off here to the side, that big brown box, that is our 3-inch crossover pipe. So, also an update on that front. Summit was really cool. They went ahead and they took back the Magnaflow thing. I just explained to them, and it sat here in its box for forever. And I opened it up, and it was pathetically small and undersized. They took it back. They've refunded me. Super happy that they did that. It was kind of right at the edge of 90 days. It was inside the 90 days when I contacted them. And then there's like that long wait that you have anything these days where you have to wait for someone to contact you back. And ultimately, like, they could have been jerks about it and not done it, but they did the right thing. I'm happy there. The Gibsons are ours. So like I already told them, I was like, these have been on the engine, I've had them forever. I'm fine with that. The price on those has gone through the roof. I could probably sell them and make money, to be straight up honest with you. But I'm kind of tempted to open that thing up, but we may just wait. I don't know, maybe I'll do it off camera. I'm kind of want to make sure it is what it's supposed to be. But something that still bothers me is this stupid thing right here. That is a brand new, if we want to call it that, Gates hose. Again, this is the best one. I've had several. This is the best looking hose I've been able to get. Who knows, I could, run this truck and, put it through its paces, and it might last 20 years. It might last like the OE. It just looks terrible. And again, this looks better than anything else I've been able to find. The Mopar hoses are just constantly pushed back. Running the factory hose might honestly have been a really smart thing to do, but it's just, you sit there and you think, man, it's a brand new motor, everything's new, it's a 20-year-old hose, why would we run that? And common sense tells you not to do that, but the rest of the world tells you, if this is what you're going to put out as a new part, maybe we do just run 20-year-old hoses now. But it is what it is. We're stuck on the headers anyway. So what I am going to do in the meantime is come over here to the Continental hose. This will be our new upper. The OE upper is right here. You can tell because it has that sort of incomplete. It's really weird. That's all factory. That's how it's always been since I got the truck. But it has that nice braided loom like we put over the hoses, and then it has a heat shrink on one side, and then it doesn't have it on the other. That's basically like right where it would sit on the fan shroud. I guess they were concerned about abrasion or something. But man, that OE 20-year-old hose sure looks better than this stuff. Even this one. This is the one that I've actually settled with, that I'll decide, hey, I'm going to put it on the truck. Again, this is the one that I found on my birthday. That's what I spent my day off on my birthday doing, was running into even more parts stores trying to find a decent hose. This one is from Continental. I picked it up in an AutoZone. It's E71713 or 62069XL or 2003-7281. I really don't know what Continental's thinking on that. So that brings us to another issue. This beautiful, good-looking hose here is our factory Mopar OEM lower hose, and you can see inside it's got a spring, and it's also nasty, right? And I got to be careful because I just cleaned the tarp here. But we had left it off right here, and I was telling you, like, yeah, we could probably wrap it here. That's not ideal. You want it to be close to the confines of the hose. That's just stainless TIG rod. That's from Vibrant, if anyone's curious. So what I found just right here before I was trying to pick what to do in the shop today, and we kind of wound up on this. This is a big old proto max socket, right? And if I take this, and we'll just come to this side because it's easier to get into, see how that fits real nice. This is 1.25 inches. I'm thinking we might want to scale it down maybe a size or two, maybe like inch and a 1/16, somewhere in there. Maybe 1 1/8 inches would be good. I'm going to pick a socket that I think will fit in there well, factoring in that we need like, 1/16 inch of a so for spring, doubled for two sides contacting the hose. You get the idea, math it, so like an extra 1/8 of an inch, if you will. And once I find one that I think fits, I'm just going to start trying to wrap a spring, and then I'm going to try to shove it into our lower, which where is that thing at? I'm not even sure. I'll have to find it. And yeah, I guess that's what we'll start doing here. So at least some progress will be made. All right, so this is still the 1.25 inch, and as you can see, that has like a really, really good fit. The catch is that's like too tight to the sidewall of the hose to factor in the spring. So I'm going to drop it down. We might try the 1 1/8, and if that's too big, we'll drop down to a 1/16 or a 1 inch or something, and then we'll see if we can maybe wrap some stainless coil around it. So right there, if you can see it, that's the 1 1/8 upside down, of course, for your viewing inconvenience, but it fits really well in there. Obviously, it would fit better if my hand wasn't masking the view. And what I mean by that is it will drop down, and you can see there's a lot of play around this thing. So I'm going to try using this as our spring creator, and we'll see what it looks like when we start to slide that into the hose. Alright, so what I am running into is the curvature of that lower radiator hose is making it insanely difficult to seat these springs. Keep in mind, I'm limited to 36-inch runs. I thought that would kind of be long enough. And I'm also not sure that you could get, you know, like a bigger TIG rod, right? You know, the 3 feet's kind of standardized and kind of on the long end, right? Some people would cut them down even like more manageable sizes. I don't know of 4, 5, or 6 footers. Maybe they're out there. I'm not sure, but this is a 36-inch, a 3-foot piece wrapped. In this case, I've dropped down to, this is 3/4. Because again, what's happening is like the springs are just having a heck of a time. I mean, this is the hose I'm trying to work with, and you can kind of see the issues. Last night I got real late on me. There's one of my springs I've pulled out. I rewound that one several times. What my issue is, I'm trying to think if there's like a good way without welding for me to conjoin springs. And what I'm wanting to do by having the smaller coil is I'm hoping I can just sort of like dump it down like so, and that's really not ideal. I would like it to be tight to the sidewall, but I don't really know how to snake a spring all the way through. My other deal, I kind of want to keep the factory hose intact just in case these fail until I get the new Mopar. I want to assume it's decent quality. But if I were to like bisect it, just cut it down the side and pull out the hose, we've had it break on us as I tried to extract it. I could clean it up if I could get it out, but my biggest fear now is I don't know how I would ever get it to snake through this stupid hose. So as inefficient as this is, I'm kind of liking the prospects of it being this small. I mean, this was wrapped tight when I did this. I did this by hand. I was kind of afraid to put it on a drill just because I kind of wanted more finite control over it, you know, and I thought it would then stretch out better if I did it by hand because I wouldn't be able to, you know, generate the same torque load with it, spring it, you know, rewind as fast. So I think I'm going to make another one of these and see if I can join them and then try to feed them in here. I have one in here that I've like pushed down as far as I can from one of these sides. I don't remember if it's this one or that one, and it's like it's doing its job right where it should be, but I can't really get anything to go past it, and I don't think from the other side I can feed stuff in to meet it. It's just kind of a mess, to be straight up honest with you. So online, about the only place that I can find it that does these is Earl's, and they're 4-footers, which would be nice, but I'm not sure. I mean, I think what I'm doing is just as good, if not better quality, and I don't know if I could feed those through either is the problem. So it's just kind of a trial and error process, but this looked really cool. I got a picture of it. Again, obviously, as soon as I had to like take my hand off of the coil, it kind of unwound itself. But going 3/4 and then with the unwind, that puts it, I mean, just right where it nests in there with maybe like 1/8 of an inch on the sidewall, you know, between the spring and the sidewall. And then when I stretch this, my hope is that it fills up. I really don't know. All the old dudes, again, that I know that probably would have known how to do this and have done it their whole lives, like, they're not around for me to ask anymore. So I'm trying to freewheel this. Can't find anything on the internet. That's kind of a buzzkill. You just get into a bunch of articles where people debate it, and some say it was only factory fill and all this stuff. And I've been around long enough. I've seen lower hoses get sucked, and it has nothing to do with an inefficient cooling system. It's just something that happens with high-performance engines, and you don't want that because you don't want to overheat, because then you're spending a lot of money doing stuff that's not enjoyable. So I'm going to keep playing around and see what I can do, and I'll try to update you as best I can. Somehow, and this is a bad idea, this isn't like super tight because I did it by hand, but I know what springs do under tension. And, that said, I wanted to try and showcase one that was tight. This is the one I just whipped out. I mean, it takes like half a minute, but there we go. So you definitely want a glove on when you do that, because that would totally cut you. But that's spring 2, and again, is it kind of, you see it uncoil there? Dropping it in. I mean, this one's a little fitting like super tight, which is good. So yeah, it's just trial and error, and my hope is I've left the square end, and what I mean by that is like right there above my traffic finger. Can't really tap the screen to make it focus better, but there's like the square end on the TIG rod that like tells you what type of material it is. I guess if you ever were to mix them, or you just need to double check type of a thing. And I'm hoping I can maybe like twist those together. I've got the linesman's over here. We're gonna see if that works, but the hope is if I can conjoin these and just snake in 6 feet of this is what those two would be, that maybe I'll meet up with the other one. We'll see. My fear is that as soon as we hit like a really radical bend right there, it might just bottom out in the sidewall. I don't really know, but if I can't get these two to work, I might buy the stupid spring from Earl's, which I also don't know if it'll work, which is a shame. But like this stuff, it's not exactly cheap, and if I can't get it to work, I don't want to like waste it when I could have used it, you know, to practice teaching myself to TIG weld. So anyway, it looks cool on the socket, and that's something. So we at least have that for you. So anyway, we'll see if I can get this in there, and I'll update you. All right, so update for you, using a combination of pliers and half-inch drive impact extensions. And this little gem right here is a long plastic scraper. This is one of those 3-piece set deals. I think it came from Summit. Don't hold me to it. I was originally going for trim tools, and then I saw these and I was like, hey, that might actually work. This is the smallest size, so I don't see a standalone part number for you, but it was a 3-piece set, plastic scrapers. You can probably find them Harbor Freight all over the place. Stretching this out, we've got right about 8 inches. I don't want to pull it anymore because I think then it would get too wide. And believe it or not, using this steel, I've got these shoved in into kind of the worst spots. There's like one subtle area. So like right here, I can collapse the hose, right? There's no spring there. Coming in, knew that was going to happen. I've got a spring wedged here. There's like, I don't know, a tip of my thumb between where the 2 springs meet. So here and here there's a spring, in this little area here I can't get the springs to seat farther. So what I'm going to try to do now is install that spring that just fell, and I'll probably come in from this side, see if I can push it any. If I can't, I'm going to stretch this one. I'm going to come in from that side and push it as well. So this is far from ideal, but I guess it's like a E for effort type of a deal for us, so I'm just going to see what I can do, and hopefully something works. Alright, I think this is probably going to be as good of a view as you can get. This is one of my handmade stretch springs. The issue that you've got, as soon as you hit a bend or anything subtle, it gets really hard to control it, and I kind of wonder, I don't want to leave too big of a tab because we could potentially poke a hole in the hose, which I try to bend them back to prevent that. But if I could like wind it and somehow then release it, but I can't really do that. I mean, I'd like have to drill a hole in a screwdriver type of a thing, and then it's still not really going to get me where I need to go. But I've got a spring here that doesn't, and then where this spring ends is right there. So again, it's like a very subtle section basically between my thumb and traffic finger, where I now come in with that plastic pry bar and try to shove that down, and then of course we'll do the same thing over here. But yeah, it's, I guess it's like peace of mind, and hopefully better than it would be, but hopefully there's no issues from this either. So we'll just continue on and see if we get lucky. Alright, so this obviously doesn't look as cool as it did moments ago. The reason, one, that I leave those hangs or the tangs over so I can push with them, I've got that seated pretty good. The thing that's important and the reason why it's not super cool looking and right up here at the top running all the way to the perimeter, this goes over the water pump, and the side that doesn't go over the water pump goes over a plastic nipple off of the radiator. You do not want a spring there. So I believe we would have just enough clearance, and then the spring, you can see it if the light is just right. It's really not that far recessed, maybe right at about the bend. And then if I spin this sucker around, look at that glorious, I mean, that looks like factory. So the good news is this spring and that spring are like really good. The first spring that's in there is not so cool looking, but it's also been snaked like through, you know, an S-bend, if you will. But what I'm going to try to do without the tripod, like, I can collapse this, right? I can't collapse here, I can't collapse here or here, and I've got a spring now pushed into there. That's a spring. There's like this section here has a little bit of an area right at the bend, and then I'm back to this new spring. So the only compromised section is here, and from what I've seen, when hoses get sucked flat, it's usually in like a plane, like a straight section. I'm sure that will not be the case here since that's where I don't have a spring, but the problem with this one is I was pushing it down, it just kind of is going on top of itself, so I don't know if I'll try to shove it more, but I mean, like, starting here, I've got a spring, so it's literally like 75% of my thumb there is all the area that we don't have spring tension to prevent a collapse. So I'm pretty happy with this, and I might play with that a tad more. If I were to extract the spring, coil it a little tighter, and then try to like stretch it after the install, it's just the angle that I think is going to kill us. But for never having done this and there not being answers on the internet, I'd say we've done okay. So I'm going to continue on with this, see if we can make it better, and then we will kind of wrap this up quite literally. Alright, so what are we doing up here? Well, we're standing because I've been laying down on the creeper. We've got the lower radiator hose installed. We had this is actually what I had cut for the lower radiator hose. I was going to have to trim it again. I decided to leave it bare. That way I can kind of monitor it in the event that there's any issues with spring or suction from the 408, and it's just going to be easier to see than with this cover. The reason for the cover, I don't necessarily, I kind of like what we did back there with the black and the blue, you know, the heater hoses, not because I want to draw attention to the heater hoses, but because it sort of brings you into the engine. You got to realize the engine looks amazing, but you can't really see it or appreciate it because it's tucked in super deep and super far back. That's not like a traditional muscle car, right? So you kind of need something to bring your attention to it. Now, coming in this way, that's a bad news text right there. We've got the upper radiator hose, and that is the piece of junk that I hate so much I put everything on hold for and spent forever trying to find something. In the middle is the 20-plus-year-old factory hose, which looks the best out of these three, which is very difficult to believe. Now, this is exactly how, again, I'm the original owner of the truck, this is how it's always been. You've got a nice, like, shrink wrap here over the flexible braid. We can talk. And then right here, it's frayed. There was never, ever something to seal this. I don't know if they were supposed to be. I don't know if the factory got lazy. Maybe they ran out of the heat shrink. I have no idea. That's how it's always been. Now, the reason that would be there, it would be in this area here, where the hose rests against the plastic fan shroud. Not a huge deal, you would think, you know, like rubber versus plastic, but it is right on the edge, and it would take a lot of vibrations, a lot of time, if you will, for that to do anything. But as I grabbed this to bring it over, I want to showcase this. I'd never really flipped it around and paid attention to it. That right there, let me try to focus for you, is a tear. So it actually did provide abrasion resistance. The reason I bring that up, I've got this set up ready to go, and I thought, you know, I don't know if I really even want that. You know, it's easy to clean the hose. It looks good when it's clean. If we get a factory one that looks way better than this, we'll probably stick it on as well. And then when I saw that, I thought, yeah, maybe we ought to go ahead and do that. You know, that'd be a really lame way to you know, have a crisis, and that would get a mess everywhere, considering that's at the top and the front. You're going to be traveling forward. Momentum, inertia, whatever you want to call it, in fluid dynamics suggest we're going to have things coalesce back and then down with gravity, which is kind of the worst case scenario for the aesthetics of your engine. So, long story short, I guess we'll go ahead and just cover it. If I hate it, I can take it off. Where you're going to have issues is here at this. It's kind of a smooth 90, really. But the issue is just going to be, you know, like, you want it to be uniform there, but you don't want any down there, because that's where you're going to have a clamp. Same thing here. You want to terminate it well short of that. I'm going to have to probably remove this one and kind of take a gander at where we have everything. And if I can, let me, you know what, maybe we can just see it from up here. I'll save myself the trouble. Oh boy, it's been a while. I had to grab the step stool and everything. So right there, that is our lower radiator hose with springs. I'm not too happy with the way it's bending, but I think that's correct. I don't really know. We can still tweak it. It's not the end of the world. And I'm trying to figure out, for the life of me, I can't recall how that mounts. The transcooler lines, I have a Mag Daddy and I have some trick billet clamps. I'll have to figure that out. That may be something we hit on, or I mean, technically it's fine as is. They just have a little bit more bounce to them than you would like. They're not going to run into anything. It's just you'd prefer that to be fixed a little bit better. And, yeah, I think that's everything we've done. There's a lot of factory cable ties down there that were not cut flush, and I've been getting stabbed by them all afternoon, particularly when we were working on that hose. Let's see, what was it? The electrical cable that runs to the starter and up to the front, you know, kind of through the conduit, convoluted tubing. That thing is also missing mounts, and so what I did is I kind of simplified it. I just sort of dumbed it down and ran that through a Mag Daddy with a cable tie. So it is what it is. But yeah, I think I'm gonna dig down in there, see if I hopefully don't have to remove anything. I can't remember how I'd structured it. That top bracket may need to come off, but maybe I can cheese it. We'll use our little Wiha spring pliers. But yeah, we're getting that thing off because it's hideous and I don't trust it. And I guess I will go ahead and seal that up and just have it there for the abrasion resistance. Alright, so new night here, Monday after work, and we're right where we left off. Kind of don't exactly remember where we left off, but the lower radiator hose is on. Springs turned out really well. And went ahead, I think the last thing I did before I had to call it a night and get inside was get that hideous, brand new upper radiator hose off. So that was a struggle. Wound up, as you can see, we've got some assistance here. The back, and I structured this as best I could upon installation to facilitate a removal in the event that this hose ruptured, which I was afraid it would. But basically the 3/8 bolts, there's the one right there. You can kind of see the stainless head on it through a tall aluminum spacer. Need a 9/16 socket there. You've got the front side of that bracket. It's sort of covered up by the hose, but it came off of the, in fact, the stud's right there in the powder coated bracket behind the alternator. That's what I had to loosen to get access to allow the spring pliers to get in there. It was a pain pulling that thing off. The radiator side was just fine. So now what I'm trying to decide is how much of a covering I want to put on. And I've debated doing the whole hose, and then part of me, like all the time when I would detail the truck, you know, I thought, you know, man, it's kind of nice just having that, you know, nice clean rubber hose there. I'm sort of thinking I legitimately may just replicate what the factory did, albeit I will have the you know, heat shrink on two ends so we don't just have a frayed mess. And basically just try to cover it where it's sitting on top of our plastic fan shroud. So I'm gonna hot knife this sucker down a little bit, and I don't know, it's kind of it's a hard call. It's Like, I had no objection. Like, I mean, for a 20-year-old factory hose, that looks really good. It was always super easy to clean. This thing gets super dusty where I work, and so coming in, being able to just wipe that down is nice. So I'm sort of thinking, even though I've got this structured all this way, I kind of think I'll just replicate what the factory did. So probably somewhere in this region, and we'll cut it off. I'll try to remember the length in case anyone wants to replicate what I did. But just so we have the abrasion resistance, because again, pretty sure I showed this to you yesterday, that does actually have a tear there. And again, you can't really call it a sharp edge, but I mean, there is a lip where that, plastic shroud terminates. So I guess it did its job. I mean, otherwise, without this being chewed through, it would have been chewing through the hose the entire time. I'm not sure it ever would get through it, at least with the OE hose. Now, that junk back there, it might. But I guess we'll replicate what they did, and I'll be content with that. So I'm going to go ahead and try to get that done, then I'm going to go inside, make my supper, and watch the Mavericks. So Game 5's tonight. Anyway, that's kind of going to be this episode, I think, is we got the lower radiator hose and the upper radiator hose installed. We did the springs down there. We're going to replicate the factory abrasion resistance here, and we've upgraded the stupid hose, and that's about all there is to it. So with that said, I'm going to get to cutting this stuff. Again, hot knife only, otherwise you end up with that. Like that hideous frayed mess, and we do not want that. We want something clean and uniform. So we'll try to give our take on what the factory did, and you'll see it here in just a few minutes. All right, I can't really recall. It's been a while since we've used the hot knife, but it's still here, still functional. And, got my light on with my handy dandy automatic assistant. So I'm going to go with roughly 10 inches. I think the factory had like 7. We're just going to call it good here. So we just simply come in right where we want the cut roughly. I didn't bother to see if this is warmed up enough. Looks like it's kind of not. We'll get there eventually. Starting to go. Again, ideally you let this warm up just a tad longer than I did. Guess I was a bit impatient, but that gives you the really clean, trying to get this in the frame without torching myself. But I think you can sort of see it. By torching myself, I mean burning myself severely. So camera's off to the side, I'm over here. But this is what I wanted, was my little 10-inch piece, and so now I'm going to retract my automatic button holder downer, and we're going to go slide this on over the radiator hose. We will grab our glorious little heat shrink, and we'll wrap this thing up quite literally. Alright, so just to kind of walk you through this, it doesn't look great, but I sort of did what I had to do. So brand new Continental hose, which looks better than the Gates. There's my heat shrink, and you'll note I've got the bulge. This is just anywhere else on this hose, like this entire segment from the front of the radiator all the way down to that curve, I can lay this wrap and it seats beautifully. There's no bulge, no bubble. It's this bend right here, this kind of close to a sharp 90 that has problems. What I've done though to kind of try and conceal it, and I already have, this is totally heat shrunk down here. What I did, I extended the heat wrap, and then I came in and I tried to leave the bulge there. Why? Because that's going to face back and towards the inside. And then what I'm going to do here is overlap, just a bit. This one's still loose. I haven't shrunk it down yet. And I think I can tweak it, but I want to highlight when you cut this stuff, there's like the partitions, think of it as like a top and a bottom layer conjoined right here to seam. So if I rotate that and I have the seam here, this is the top of the radiator hose. It's going to be the most visible. This would be the front that's kind of not visible because of the shroud. So play with this. If you were to put this here, it's going to be an eyesore, right? Unless you want, if you think that's a cleaner look, a cleaner aesthetic, you can totally put it there. But for me, I'm kind of thinking rotate it like so, kind of have it like at 90 degrees, and then that'll sort of secure this. And I'm honestly okay with that bulge there, because again, I would rather have it in that location. So I'm going to go ahead, shrink this down, and we'll take a look at the finished product. Most important thing is just extra abrasion resistance. If the factory did it, they wouldn't spend the time or the money to put that on the hose if they weren't concerned about it. So we're going to replicate it, and I'll kind of show you what this looks like shrunk down. Alright, so just real quick, one final comparison. In the middle, we have the factory Mopar radiator hose as terminated from Dodge. They've got the Heatshrink on the backside, really nice. Up here, it was just a frayed edge. That's how it's always been. That top one is a brand new Gates hose that I was scared to death to run because it looks terrible. Everything I could find looked that bad or worse, in all honesty. And then down here was the birthday score, the Continental hose, which looks kind of an in-between of the new Gates and the new, or the factory Mopar one. That again, factory abrasion resistance, this is my version of that. Not super thrilled there, but again, that is the one spot on the whole freaking hose where we had any bubbling issues. I'd wrapped the whole thing, if you recall. So case in point, like, don't roll. I could have had all this entire stretch here perfect. I could have stopped right here, terminated, it would have been awesome. It was just this bend here that gave us the trouble. But like I said, I hid everything to the backside, and that also gives a little bit more meat on the bottom as well. But you can see the seam I was referencing there. I think by having it there, it shouldn't be visible. People will more or less see that. But yeah, I'm going to go ahead, get the clamps off of the Gates hose at the top, and then I'm going to try to stab this thing on, go make supper, because it's getting to be 8 o'clock or so. Not sure you're going to be able to see this very well, but I'm going to try to do this left-handed. So, I always brag about these being really good spring pliers. I had to incorporate the right hand, sadly. But, if we get one hurdle there, just have to pick my position now. Boom. That is why I love these suckers right here. The thing is, if I could get the detent sort of switched, I think they would be killer. Basically what I mean by that is this sort of shallow offset jaw. See how the top is kicked in here, you know, at the 45 degrees, and this one's down at the bottom. If that top jaw had the same outboard positioning, I think it would grab these really, really good. What happens is you wind up digging into the hose clamp, which is not ideal, but it's just they open so wide. It works really well. Obviously, anything larger than, say, 2.5 inch, you'd probably have to do something different. But for like these heater hoses, anything, you know, basically inch, 5/8, half, 3/4, 1.25 inch, anything in that range, these are really hard to beat for that stuff. So anyway, got to wrestle the stupid thermostat side on. This one's in place. It kind of seems to sit different than stock, so I'm thinking I need to rest that down a little bit more. And then I'm trying to remember, I think the cables went above the radiator hose, so should have taken pictures, but I'll get this tucked up and we'll see what she looks like. There's one. Snaking along, abrasion resistance way down in that mess. It's number 2. Never fun, never easy, but we got it done. Everything's buttoned back down. Again, just that top alternator deal. Disconnected the vacuum line for cruise control off the throttle body, just again for easier access. But yeah, there it is. And again, this seems to be, I'm guessing it's just like a little bit shorter of a hose. I'm talking like maybe half to 3/4 of an inch shorter, and that's why it's kind of riding up taller. The factory almost always like hugged this, and so I guess maybe the bend might have something to do with it. Maybe it was a little bit tighter with the factory hose, but either way, that looks a lot better and provides more peace of mind than that Gates one. Again, the Gates lower looked great. It's just, that thing was terrible. So we've got the Braid on there for abrasion resistance. If we hate it, if we want to cover it, do something fancier, we can later. But yeah, it's about 8:20 now. I missed my target time to go start supper, so it kind of kills things. But I'm gonna get inside, catch the Game 5 Mavericks and Jazz. Hopefully Dallas can pull it out tonight. Take the series lead 3-2. But on that note, this is it. Transcooler lines, we'll probably try to mount those a little bit better, get them tied off kind of more to our liking. We'll just throw that in some random video if I remember. Again, they're fine. I would just prefer them to be sort of articulated a little bit tighter, if you will, less bounce and dancing around. But yeah, got it done. We can finally put this stuff away, and I still am not super happy with that upper radiator hose, but it looks better than anything else I've been able to find, and I don't have the Mopar one. So short of running a well-known 20-plus-year-old hose, which you're kind of leery of that, even though it still looks better. I think we did okay. So main thing in this one, we found a decent upper radiator hose. It's got the factory abrasion resistance. We've installed it. We've got the, 15 feet of stainless steel TIG rod for an inner spring in our lower hose. It's in. Everything's good under the hood at this point in time. We're waiting on headers now. So as soon as those come in, we'll get to town. But this is the day before HEMI day. And we got 408s, 408 Magnum, 408 LA, 440, another 440, and 318, and a 5.2, and no HEMIs in here. And if we technically count the late model stuff, we got a 5.7 HEMI, and that's good enough reason to celebrate. Sadly, the Challenger's not out here. We got the Charger and the Duster holding down the fort. So anyway, I'm going to wrap this up, get inside, make supper, catch the game. Did you learn anything here? Probably not, but if you're having trouble sourcing an upper radiator hose, try Continental. Again, everything I found looked as bad as what I had or worse, and I tried and I tried and I tried. So birthday score there. And the springs outside of that one in the deepest, darkest crevice of the bins, they came out looking sweet, so I'm really happy there. On that note, it is supper time for me. Hopefully you have a great rest of your week. We'll be back Saturday for some tool action. With that said, LoneStarMopars.com is a website. You can find us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, all three at Lone Star Mopars. More of our carnage over here. That Coke and Flex head, I like to flip the handle up and kind of use it sort of as like a semi-speed wrench, if you will. It's not as fast as a speed wrench, but it's faster than, if I were to sit there and ratchet to run the bolt down. So it works, and it stays put pretty well, so kind of playing around with that. But anyway, have a great rest of your week. You can find us Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, all three at Lone Star Mopars. On that note, I'll catch you back here for more action from the shop.